Imagine being filled with fiery passion, ready to defend your country, only to discover that the enemy isn't some foreign soldier, but the mud, the rats, and the silent scream of a dying friend. Imagine being told you're fighting for glory, only to find that glory is a myth, and all that's real is the relentless, grinding wait for a shell that has your name on it. Welcome back to In a Nutshell. If you're new here, we take the world's most powerful books and distill them into their core lessons so you can understand life, history, and humanity just a little bit better. So hit that subscribe button and join our growing community of lifelong learners. Today, we're diving deep into a book that doesn't just tell you about war, it drags you into the mud with it. We're talking about Erich Maria Remarque's masterpiece, All Quiet on the Western Front. Published in 1929, it's not a story of heroes and villains, but of a generation of men who were destroyed by war, even if they managed to survive the bullets. We'll follow young Paul Bäumer and his classmates from the school benches to the front lines of World War I. We'll explore how their youthful idealism is brutally stripped away, replaced by a primal instinct for survival. We'll reflect on how this story is still painfully relevant today, reminding us to question the hollow rhetoric of glory and to truly see the human cost behind the headlines of conflict. This isn't a story about winning or losing. It's a story about what is lost when we send the young to fight the wars of the old. Stay tuned. Here is All Quiet on the Western Front in a nutshell. Hello and welcome. Today we're stepping into the mud and blood of World War I by Erich Maria Remarque's classic, All Quiet on the Western Front. Our guide through this nightmare is a young German soldier named Paul Bäumer. When the story opens, Paul is not a hardened veteran. He's just a kid, barely out of his teens. He and his entire class, 20 young men full of life and poetry and dreams, were convinced by their teacher, Erich, to enlist. He filled their heads with patriotic speeches about duty and glory, calling them the Iron Youth. And they believed him. They put on their uniforms, full of excitement, ready to be heroes. But the book opens not with a glorious charge, but with them behind the lines, and we immediately see the first crack in that idealistic facade. Half of Paul's class is already dead. They've been at the front for only a short time, but they've already learned a brutal truth, that the first casualty of war is the idealism you went in with. They've traded their school books for shovels and their poetry for the art of survival.
Remarque doesn't give us grand battle scenes. Instead, he shows us the strange, almost boring reality of life at the front. It's a world of extremes. You can be shaken with terror one minute, and then in the next moment of quiet, you're having a philosophical discussion about what you'd do if peace broke out. Paul and his friends, the shrewd Kaczynski, or Cat, who can find food anywhere, the gentle Mueller, who can't stop thinking about Kimmerich's boots, and Tieton, a skinny soldier with a huge appetite and a bigger grudge against their sadistic corporal Himmelstas. They aren't soldiers in the grand sense. They're survivors. Think of it like this. Imagine you're in a constant, life-threatening thunderstorm. You can't control the lightning, you can't stop the rain. All you can do is try to find a little shelter, keep your head down, and hope the next bolt doesn't hit you. That's their life. Their whole world shrinks to the few feet of earth around them. They aren't fighting for Germany. They're fighting to get through the next 5 minutes. This is where Remarque shows us the strange logic of the front. Paul describes how soldiers develop a kind of tactical indifference. If you felt the horror of every single moment, you'd go mad. So you become an animal. Your instincts sharpen. You can feel the difference between different types of shells. You know almost by smell when an attack is coming. It's a dehumanizing process, but it's the only way to stay alive. To understand how war dehumanizes us, we don't need to look at a battle. We just need to look at a pair of boots. One of the most heartbreaking episodes in the book happens in a field hospital. Paul and his friends visit their dying classmate, Franz Kimmerick. His leg has been amputated. He's just a shadow of the boy they knew. And while Franz lies there, fading in and out of consciousness, his friend Mueller is staring at his boots. They're beautiful, English-made leather boots. Mueller's own boots are falling apart. Now, on the surface, this seems incredibly cruel. How can you think about a dead man's shoes while your friend is dying in front of you? But that's the point. They aren't being cruel. They're being practical. They've learned a terrible lesson at the front. Sentimentality will kill you. You can't afford to mourn every friend. You have to detach. Franz is as good as dead. The boots, however, will keep another soldier alive for a few more weeks. They become a symbol of survival, passed from one dying man to the next. They represent the brutal economy of the trenches, where life is cheap, but a good pair of boots is priceless. When Franz finally dies, Paul takes the boots back to Mueller. It's an act of grim practicality, but also a final, silent duty to a friend. Later, when Mueller is killed, the boots will pass to Paul. They are a chain of death, connecting them all. Paul gets a short, precious leave and returns home. He hopes to reconnect with his old life, with his family, with the world before the war. But he can't. He walks into his childhood bedroom with its books and its familiar posters, and he feels like a ghost. He's a stranger in his own life. His father keeps asking him questions about the front, not out of real understanding, but out of a kind of naive curiosity. He wants to hear war stories. Paul has no stories, only a hollow ache. He visits the old school, and his old teacher Kantorek is there, still preaching about glory, still trying to convince another generation of boys to go and fight. He watches these fresh-faced recruits filled with the same fire he once had, and he feels nothing but a sickening dread. He knows what's waiting for them. He sees them as lambs being led to the slaughter. This section is so powerful because it shows the ultimate victory of the war. It has already killed the person Paul was. He says, "I am young. I am 20 years old. Yet I know nothing of life but despair, death, fear, and fatuous superficiality cast over an abyss of sorrow." The war has poisoned his past and stolen his future. He has nothing to go back to and nothing to look forward to. He is most at peace, not with his family, but back at the front, with his comrades, because that is the only reality he has left. Perhaps the most famous and devastating chapter in the book is when Paul is on sentry duty in a shell hole, caught in no man's land during a bombardment. As the barrage lifts, a French soldier stumbles and falls into the hole with him. Without thinking, purely on instinct, Paul stabs him. He doesn't want to. He has no hatred for this man, but it's him or Paul. And so the French soldier lies there, wounded, dying slowly throughout the night. And Paul has to stay there, in the hole, with him, for hours. He can't leave. He has to listen to the man's rattling breaths, his groans. The terror and adrenaline fade, and in their place comes a profound, crushing guilt. This is the turning point for Paul. He looks at the dying man, this stranger in a different colored uniform, and he doesn't see an enemy. He sees a man. He sees his photograph, his wife, his child. He sees a life as real and as precious as his own. In a desperate, futile attempt to make amends, Paul tries to bandage his wounds. He talks to him. He promises to write to his family, to take care of them. He calls him comrade.
"I will write to your wife," he whispers in the darkness, knowing full well he has no way to find her, no name to go on. It's just the desperate human need to apologize, to undo the unthinkable. He stays with the body until morning, a changed man. He has killed not an abstraction, not the enemy, but a man. This moment strips away the last vestiges of patriotic fervor and reveals war for what it is: the business of men killing other men for reasons they barely understand.
The war grinds on. One by one, Paul's friends fall. The gentle, philosophical cat, the one who could always find a hot meal, the father figure of the group, is finally hit. Paul carries him for miles to a field hospital, only to arrive and find that a splinter from the shell has caught Cat in the head. He's dead. Paul's anchor is gone. He is utterly alone. The front becomes quieter. There's talk of an armistice, of peace. Paul has time to think, and that's the most dangerous thing of all. He looks around at the wasteland, at the remnants of his generation, and he feels a profound sense of loss, not just for his friends, but for his entire future. In one of the most poignant and ironic scenes in all of literature, Paul is back on sentry duty. The battlefield is eerily calm, and then he sees it. A butterfly. It flutters down and lands on the skull of a dead soldier. Think about the metaphor. The butterfly is delicate, beautiful, free. It's a symbol of life, of peace, of the natural world that has been obliterated by the war. For a moment, Paul is captivated. He reaches out, drawn to this tiny, fragile piece of beauty in a world of horror. He is, for a split second, human again. And then, a shot rings out. A sniper's bullet. Paul's hand twitches, then is still. The official army report, the one that goes out to his family, to the newspapers, simply states, "All quiet on the Western Front." It was a day of no significant action. He wasn't killed in a heroic charge. He was killed by a stray bullet while reaching for a butterfly. His face, the book tells us, wore an expression of calm, as though he was glad it was over.
So, what are we left with? What is the core message of this devastating book? It's a story about the ultimate betrayal. A generation of young men was betrayed by the generation before them. They were fed lies about glory and honor, sent off to die in a war they didn't start for causes they didn't understand. They were robbed of their youth, their innocence, and their future. The book shows us that war is not about heroism, it's about survival. It's about the mundane horror of living with rats and lice and the constant threat of death. It's about how war doesn't just kill you physically, it can kill you emotionally and spiritually, leaving you a hollow shell, even if you come home in one piece. Paul's generation was lost, not because they died, but because the world they returned to was a world they could no longer be a part of. The values, the hopes, the dreams they once had were incinerated in the trenches. The lesson for us, nearly a century later, is to be deeply skeptical of the rhetoric of war. When we hear politicians or pundits talk about glory or sacrifice or national honor, we should remember Paul Bäumer. We should remember Kemmerich's boots. We should remember the French soldier dying in a shell hole. We should remember the butterfly. War is not an abstraction. It is the most brutal, dehumanizing experience imaginable. And its true cost is measured not in territory won or lost, but in the shattered bodies and souls of the young people forced to fight it. Thank you for listening to this summary of All Quiet on the Western Front, here on In a Nutshell. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like and subscribe.
Share this with a friend who needs to hear it. And let us know in the comments, what book should we summarize next? Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and stay human.